Yo, what's cracking mates? As you can see, there's yet another video about Karazhan on my channel, cause I have a sweet spot for that area. This time it's about getting out of bounds pretty much right at the start of the instance and being able to go to the last boss from there. Since I have resubbed for another project, I'm also able to show you the state of this glitch on the official 10.05 Dragonflight servers. Position yourself against the slope in the servants' quarter where all the spiders roam around like I do, and get ready for some sweet, juicy out of bounds action. The secret source for our mad endeavor is called the Elixir of Giant Growth, which increases the hitbox and thus lets us pass through the geometry. There are outdated guides talking about logging out and back in after ingesting, but these no longer have the desired effect. What still works is clicking the elixir from the action bar and closing the client by pressing Alt F4 just a few milliseconds afterwards. Once you log back in, you should see your character clipping into the slope. Simply jump and then move forward to carefully fall down under the instance. Don't despair if it doesn't work for you on your first try. I had quite some failed attempts too until I figured out the timing for closing the client. What you'll notice right away is that the world famous smiley under Karazhan is missing. This is most likely due to how instances have been designed in the olden days of WoW development. I'll certainly do a dedicated video talking about old instances and the development in the future as well. The first important thing to keep in mind is that the instance portals aren't just 2D planes, but rather 3D areas which trigger the loading screen if you enter. So, unless you want to end up outside again and wasting an elixir like Sil and me, you best stay away from those as far as you can. The second important thing to worry about are the thousands of instant death zones Blizzard has introduced on the official servers. Guess someone was very salty that players opted to skip their finely crafted content. Third time's the charm, they say. This time, let's successfully leave the castle area for once. Let's move the same way as on our first try, but avoid the portal by hugging the wall to the right. Since it takes a while to reach our next destination, I'd like to talk about things that came to my mind. My very first proper out of bounds video was about Karazhan. Did you know that a small portion of Zul'Gurub's very early versions is available inside this instance? On the topic of Blizzard introducing death zones and altering old content, I'd love to see them doing a different approach for once. Instead of making it impossible to do shortcuts, they should introduce a few different leaderboards. Existing leaderboards get frozen each new patch and a new one is created. Besides leaderboards for each patch version, there should also be different ones for glitches and any percent. This will catch quite some attention and momentum from the speedrunning crowd, and I have to say, seeing a game being broken left and right is always absolutely amazing to look at. Maybe it can also rejuvenate the game a little bit. Once you reach the tree sporting some fancy red chains, you have to jump into the nether sphere, which isn't rendered if you aren't inside. It's quite a lot easier if you jump from the slope of the hill towards the castle. If you manage to get inside, run to the vertical geometry I point out, but pass it on the right side. I have to say, it's pretty cozy down here, but unfortunately, as it turns out, Blizzard decided to put you on the naughty list here too. This unfortunately ends our out of bounds skipping adventure, at least on the official servers. To preserve some history and also because it still works on private servers, I want to show you how it used to be. Here is some footage recorded on my Wrath of the Lich King private server. Like mentioned in the previous segment, pass the vertical geometry on the right side until you hit the slope and then move towards the right. You should be able to see an obvious crease. This is where we move up to reach the platform containing the end boss. If you're asking yourself why I do a video about it just now, well, I have neither played the original TBC nor really the TBC Classic re-release. A friend of mine told me about the skip back in the day, but I actually never saw it in person. To finally lay this thought in the back of my mind to rest, I simply had to learn about it. Once you reach the end of the slope and are on the same height as the platform, turn left and get as close as possible. Here is a funny side story until we reach the jumping point. Said friend used this shortcut to sneak past the mobs at the end as his feral druid to solo the chess event between raid days. When the raid lead found that they were unable to start the event, he acted all innocent and said that it's probably a bug. What a cheeky little bastard. Anyway, around this point you should be able to jump over to the platform. No fancy items or abilities required. That's it. Wasn't even as hard as I imagined it to be. I'll do another video about soloing the chess event, depending if it's still possible at all. If you're asking yourself, what the fuck is even going on? Looking at it through a map editor will certainly answer a lot of questions. The Karazhan instance is actually way bigger than the castle itself. Most rooms contained in it float over large chunks of Deadwind Pass. And thankfully, the last area hovers ever so slightly over the ground where we have clipped into. I hope you found this video interesting. I think it's an important job to document the wonkiness of our design for our descendants. Godspeed and Zug Zug.